All right, and welcome back, Hoopheads. We're here for another In the Lounge here on hoopslounge.com. Myself, Phil Boileau, Marc Griffin, Justin Rowan. We're taking on the world of basketball, one crazy story at a time. And, we wouldn't do this week's podcast do justice without starting with one of the bigger upsets that happened last night. So we're recording this on Sunday the 13th, and the Warriors lost. I haven't been able to say that all year. And
Well, you could say it in October. They lost 4 times in October, but no one's talking about that.
fair enough, fair enough. But they lost to the Bucks, the team that I like. I don't know. Do you guys think a lot of people gave them like of all the teams that they were going to run into, the Bucks? Really?
I mean, the schedule gets everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Sooner or later, the schedule gets everybody. And when you have a double overtime game in Boston, you get into Milwaukee at about 4 in the morning. They got to their hotel at 5. Klay Thompson a little banged up. Harrison Barnes out of the lineup. And you're playing on the road. It gets you. I mean, they're humans. It's not like 2K where you just start the next game and you can turn off fatigue if you want or anything like that.
Wait a minute, 2K is not real?
And, I mean, when you shoot that hot, eventually you're going to go a little bit cold. It's just kind of the laws of the universe. So we've seen longer streaks than the one Golden State just had, and given their injuries, given how many close calls they had, I mean, you're a Brook Lopez tip-in away from losing the game, or if they fouled Andre Iguodala, Brooklyn would have beat them. The close calls against the Jazz on the road. Boston obviously was a close call, so I mean, eventually you're going to lose, and I think that's what happened. I don't think it says anything about Milwaukee. They should obviously get credit for the win. They played very well, but I don't think this is something that you could look at and be like, okay, well, there's the formula for beating the Warriors. That's not something you can replicate.
So it's not starting OJ Mayo at point guard.
No, it's not.
And Giannis had a triple-double. Youngest.
He did not.
Youngest
He did
Buck.
not.
He didn't. They took a steal away or something, or.
They're going to. They credited 2 Michael Carter-Williams assists in the fourth quarter to Giannis, which has been a recurring theme for the Bucks scorers. They keep giving him credit for things he doesn't do. So when the league goes back and looks at it, they are going to take away 2 assists.
Oh wow.
Although that's another thing we haven't heard in a while. Michael Carter-Williams' assists are actually being relevant in a game, and he actually wasn't terrible. So do we maybe owe MCW a little bit of props for the first time in?
I mean,
Well,
it's great that he played well. Good for him. I mean, it's not like he doesn't show that he can be a competent player at times. To me, he's always been a backup in my eyes. But I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day. So I'm not going to change my overall opinion on Michael Carter-Williams, but.
But maybe this is the better role for him, just being that big guard off the bench who can play multiple positions.
I definitely think that is true.
All right, well,
I could detect a lot of bitterness in Justin's voice right there. But
yeah,
back
for those who have just joined, he's been the least fan of Michael Carter-Williams ever since his inception with 76ers.
Yeah. No, I'm not a fan. That's fair to say.
But they do have Greg Monroe. He was 28 and 11. I mean, like we were talking before this game actually, how the Milwaukee Bucks were a bit underperforming with all the talent they have. Do we think this possibly for them, like even though they've encountered a battered and bruised Warriors team, could this be kind of the turning point of where they're kind of finding their stride as a team? Like, did you get that feeling, or did you just see them taking advantage of really worn out?
Well, I mean, definitely the crowd was into it, and I don't put much into the statistics that's saying how the Warriors have stopped a lot of streaks over the years. I think that's if you want to get scientific, it's a conversation about being correlation versus causality. This team kind of encountered streaky teams over the years, and it just kind of happened. But really, I mean, they're gonna grow from this. like Justin was saying, that they came across a Golden State Warriors team that was on the end of a 7-game road streak, and Boston nearly had their number the night before. So I mean, but all nonetheless, you can't take this away from the Bucks. They played really hard, and they seem to be growing chemistry wise. This is a brand new franchise. These guys are playing together for the first time this last month or two, and hopefully they keep growing from it.
All right, is this anything that that the Warriors need to worry about? I mean, like you said before, it didn't show any kinks in their armor. I mean, is there anything other teams would take from this outside of calling their hotel rooms at 4 in the morning to make sure they don't catch their beauty sleep? Or
Well,
Well, go ahead,
go
Mark.
ahead. I was going to say, I would actually look to the night before to the way Avery Bradley was guarding Steph. I mean, he did a heck of a job on him, and also offensively. Just look at that as one of the templates for having to guard him. And in terms of Milwaukee, I mean, get the crowd into it. I can't believe how much more the Milwaukee's crowd was into the game versus Boston's crowd the night before. I was befuddled. They were standing half the game. Boston, they're sitting with their hands under their butts. So, I mean, that's not the way to do it.
I think that's true. I think not enough credit goes to the Bucks organization, actually, how they've had this promotional and social media campaign of Fear the Deer over the year.
Mhm.
Like there hasn't been this much interest in a Bucks team since the Glenn Robinson, Sam Cassell, Ray Allen years, and that's been a bit, right? And even now, I think like just it has that cool factor to them, but Golden State's going to be who they are, and I don't think anyone's really worried that they're going to drop off or risk missing the playoffs. They're still the team to beat in the NBA. There's no question. But we're looking at the Bucks. I mean, is this a team that we think can grow into a team we have to worry about in the East, or is there still too much of a ladder or a differential between them and the top dogs there?
Here's what I'll say. I think the Bucks, I mean, the Cavs are good and young, and they're going to be around for a while. But outside of that, when you look at the East, I would say Chicago's kind of in the need for rebuild. Atlanta might have topped out as a team. Toronto's a bit of a wild card because they will have cap space in Masai Ujiri. I mean, he has respect around the league. You even hear LaMarcus Aldridge talk about how impactful his meeting with Masai was. So you never know what's going to happen there. But outside of those teams, I think Milwaukee's the team of the future. I really do think Giannis, Jabari Parker, Greg Monroe, and Chris Middleton together is a phenomenal core. Like I said earlier, I don't think Michael Carter-Williams is the answer at point guard. It's a shame they couldn't keep Brandon Knight. I understand the reasons they did it, but he would have been a great fit. But once that roster fills out and they make changes, I think this is a team that's going to have quite a few Eastern Conference Finals appearances. But I was skeptical of this team coming into the season, and I think those roster flaws still exist. I think when you have two poor interior defenders in Jabari Parker and Greg Monroe, it really hurts your team, even if you do have good wing defenders. And they just don't have shooting. So while they're going to build confidence and maybe they start playing a little bit better, there's still roster limitations at this point, and they're still young. And I think those things are too much for them to overcome to make playoffs this season.
Yeah, and I think that lack of rim protection was best exemplified in this week's poster of the week with DeAndre Jordan, which is kind of a beautiful one on Greg Monroe. It was and it was just so ironic that it was like from from Knight to Monroe, kind of that trend. Like he was just bringing the storyline of being abused. See, I think I agree with you in a lot of ways with the Bucks, but in a lot of ways I feel that this is a team that still needs some moves for the reasons you mentioned. Like I think they have a lot of good players, but it's again one of those situations where I don't like how the puzzle pieces fit together. I really like the pieces, but I don't like the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Like as much as we name those four players. I just think that to make this team really jump to that next level, we're going to have to see at least one of those four players moved to get a bit of a maybe balance, maybe shooting. Who knows? I mean, Chris Middleton's having a bit of a down year compared to a lot of expectations, right? Like I'm looking at just the stats of the game that they beat Golden State. He was 3 for 12 and 1 for 4 from 3. Like they were expecting much more in terms of shooting. He's shooting under 40% on the year. Um, assists and rebounds at 3 and 3, very pedestrian. I mean, this is a team that has been underperforming in a lot of ways, but can you kind of like magic bubble like if you were the Bucks GM for a day, and we like to play this on Hoops Lounge, or at least I do, because it's my favorite thing in sports. And if you had to, I mean, where would you see the biggest need to be addressed for this team would be?
We've all been saying it. Point guard. I mean, to get an elite Conley, point guard like Mike Conley, that type of player would be exactly what they would need to go into the future.
Yeah, I think someone like Mike Conley, and I was actually having this conversation with somebody earlier this week, talking about if Memphis does blow it up or doesn't re-sign these free agents, I could really see Mike Conley either going to Milwaukee or the Knicks. I think those are two really good fits for him. And then, I mean, bench depth. With Milwaukee, as much as I love those four
Good.
players, you might
Yeah.
need to. You might need
There's
to.
Johnny O'Brien. Come on, he's as much bench depth as you'd ever need.
I think this is a situation where they might need to figure out who this player is, but one of those guys might need to go into a Ginobili role. Maybe it's Jabari Parker as he develops his jump shot, because eventually he's going to need to have a three-point shot for this to work. But I think if you put another floor spacer out there, I mean, in a perfect world, you have a Serge Ibaka type playing next to Greg Monroe, someone that can cover for his defensive deficiencies while also spacing the floor. Now, those players are hard to find. Maybe they make a move for a guy like Channing Frye, someone that does have decent rim protection numbers or is a decent team defender and can space the floor. But I think you might need to move one of these guys to the bench, other than Chris Middleton, I'll say, in order to get the proper spacing and to fix the needs, so that the puzzle works better while not giving up any of those good pieces that you have.
I actually completely agree there, and it's interesting. Again, going back to the stats, I was looking at Giannis's stat line. He's actually 1 for 2 from three. I know he didn't take a bunch of them, and he had 2 blocks. I mean, he's no Serge Ibaka, obviously, but he's got some size and length, and potentially that could go there. And now, I was saying in the season preview when we were doing the show with a friend of the show, Dwight Walton, that I that I think the key to this is actually Jabari Parker being the sixth man. Personally, I think him scoring off the bench would add a lot of value. But I do agree there that there has to be some kind of move, and there's not enough strength, and the pieces are kind of weird. But I mean, if you have to play like best case scenario, like would it be Conley, or do you think that there's another move that could be made there?
Mark?
Geez, I mean, with Jason Kidd at the helm, he's a wild card in and of himself. Honestly, I could see anything happening. Parker is so good as a young talent, and let's remember this is in a lot of ways his rookie year. I wouldn't move him. I think he would be the type of guy who wants to start. I don't know if he has the discipline to want to step back like that. I hope he would. Man, oh man, I do not know. Like I said, Jason Kidd is liable to do anything. When he's throwing a cup of ice on the court, this guy can do anything. I mean, seriously, what the makeup of this team is next year is a question mark. I mean, I could see them. They made a heavy hit for Greg Monroe. They could be willing to do that again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when you're looking at point guards that are available, Mike Conley probably is the best. To me, he's still a top 10 point guard in the league. He's getting up there a little bit in age, but he still has quite a few years of high-level play probably in him. And he's a veteran. He's somebody that would be good along those guys. So I think he's probably an ideal fit for them. Just because I can't see any other high-level point guards, or at least anyone near that level, being available in the free agent market or even in the trade market.
Fair enough. Now, just to switch topics for a second here, we're saying how they have some issues shooting the ball. Greg Popovich recently came out saying how he's not the biggest fan of the 3-point shot. He kind of criticized it, like, what's next, the 4-point, the 5-point. He thinks it takes away from the purity of basketball. where do you guys stand on that? Do you think Greg has a point, or he's just kind of being reluctant to change?
Well, I got to tell a story here. I'm watching a Hawks game the other night, and the Hawks broadcast crew, I think they're playing against Memphis, and the Memphis broadcast crew was talking about how Dominique had a 57-point game where he scored it all in the first three quarters and then sat in the fourth quarter. And they said, could you imagine if he had done that with the 3-point line? And then the other guy said, yeah. And I'm just sitting there going, Dominique joined the league in 1983. The 3-point line's been around since 1979. And it's I mean, give me a break. I mean, 3-point line's been vital to this league for, almost 40 years, and it was in the ABA before that. That's where it was kind of it was created. I mean, yeah, I can understand the circus element of it, but it's become such a tactic, and it's a weapon. And the way Steph is using it, standing 5 feet behind the line at points now, he's changing it completely. What people are using it for. So, yeah, I mean, it's there in a part for entertainment value, but you're not going to take that away. People love it, and now teams are using it in a way it's never been used before. You have to keep it in the game.
And you know what? I think you have to keep the 3-point line in the game, but I'll say this. If you're going to make a change, I think it would be moving the line back, and if you're going to move the line back, you need to make the court a bit bigger. So if you add to the court, make it a little bit wider, and you move that 3-point line back, I think that would make a big difference. Guys are getting so much bigger and stronger. There's so little space in that corner. I think opening it up a little bit more would be an improvement possibly to the game. I'm fine with things being the way they are. I'm a bit of a traditionalist, but if you were to make a change, I think that would be the direction to go, not removing the 3-point line, because without the 3-point line, there's no real incentive for teams to really defend out there, and you start packing the paint, and it becomes an uglier brand of basketball. Mm-hmm. And I think the way that teams like the Spurs, like Golden State, like the Atlanta Hawks use the 3-point line, the way that they create penetration, they kick it out, extra passes to get a great shot, I think that's one of the most beautiful forms of basketball I've seen. And that's something that wasn't necessarily present in the older days before the 3-point shot became a prominent part of a team's arsenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean that's actually really interesting because the counterpoint to that would be, does it take away from true post players? Because we're seeing more and more guys who are just camping out at the 3, and is it taking away from the beautiful post play in terms of Zach Randolphs and such? But again, to your point, it would just focus in there, and would they be able to have that kind of prolific talent when they're being triple teamed every single play because everyone's just kind of focusing right in that position.
And you know what? I think the taken away from post play, I don't think that's the fault of the 3-point line. Because even analytics people, what are the 2 shots that they want? They want shots at the rim, and they want them at the 3-point line.
Van Gundy world right there.
And I think it's just a case of not enough guys are coming into the league with refined post games. Maybe that's a big part of the one and done system, maybe in college, that these guys aren't spending enough time developing those skills, especially bigs, and they just don't have the opportunity to in the NBA. But I think when you start to see very good post play, like I think of someone like Kristaps Porzingis. He can play at the 3-point line, and he can play in the post. I think that's a little bit of the evolution of the game, and we see wings that post up. I mean, LeBron's obviously been doing it for quite some time, even though he's playing on the wing. Kobe, heck, even back to Michael Jordan once he got older. He added the post game to his arsenal. So I don't think that the post-up is necessarily dead. I think it's just one of those kind of lulls in truly talented post players right now, and that might be something that changes in the future.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Now, in terms of things that may change or may not, one thing I've never been a big fan of, and it's coming up right now, and if you guys haven't yet, please go on NBA.com and make sure to vote for your favorite players. All-star voting and fans voting for players. You know what? I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but I'm not a big fan of fans voting. I don't always think it brings the best talent to the table. I think that's why we have professionals. I think that's why we have beat writers who see them every day, who are right there. I think that's why we have coaches who decide. Where do you guys stand on the fan voting for the NBA All-Stars?
For me, I mean, they have the All NBAs. I really see the All Star game as basically like a high school popularity contest, and that's what it is. Not necessarily the best players are there. A name I'll mention again: Mike Conley's never been an All Star. You know, he's a heck of a player. Guys like Marcus Camby with Robert Horry, these guys have never been All Stars. Not the best guys get there. And then there's the issue. I'm sure you're going to bring it up, Phil. Is if Kobe Bryant, should get there as an old timer this year, or someone like Tim Duncan or Dirk, right? And so it's a popularity
We
contest.
see that all the time.
We've seen it with Yao Ming. I mean, this
Allen Iverson, McGrady, we just like these old guys who
and I'm sure
have done it.
there'll be the Canadian vote to try, because it's in Toronto, trying to get guys like Wiggins and Lowry and DeMar DeRozan in. So it's a popularity contest, and now it's on the internet, so everyone can vote theoretically. So that's what it is, and just embrace it for what it is. It's just a fun, popular event.
And they can vote 10 times a day. I was looking at like how you do this, and you can go. It's super easy to vote, which is obviously the only way people are going to do this. But you can do it 10 times a day. And so if someone just sits there all day, like Michael Carter Williams, well, he's going to the All-Star game.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't have any problem with it. It's for the fans. If the fans want to see Kobe come out there, as much as I hate it, and maybe some deserving player doesn't get in, it kind of is what it is, and it's only the starting five that's really voted in by the fans. The rest is decided by the coaches, which I think is proper. So maybe you have one player that isn't deserving that's in there, but the bulk of them are deserving. The only thing I'll say is I think it should stop being factored in when it comes to Hall of Fame debates. If you're going to make it for the fans, which it should be, because it's just a fun event, it's a fun weekend for the fans, it shouldn't be factored into somebody's Hall of Fame resume, knowing that. Even though the coaches vote for the bulk
of them. It factors into their salaries as well, right? Like when we look at some guys, like the more All-Star games you make more money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, potentially, that's typically for rookies if you're trying to qualify for the Derrick Rose rule, where you're eligible for more money coming off that rookie deal. Maybe some guys have it kind of as an incentive in their contract or whatever, but I mean, heck, even the conference disparity can be more unfair than the fan voting. Like, Mark, you brought up Mike Conley. If he's playing in the East, he's probably a 3 or 4 time All-Star, just because there's so many good point guards in the West. I mean, we look back even as recently as Drew Holiday making the All-Star team. Like, Mike Conley makes the All-Star team over Drew Holiday if he's playing in the East. So, and he makes it over Jeff Teague, who made it last year. So, there's things beyond players' control on whether or not they make the All-Star team, what conference they play in, who the fans are voting for. So I just don't think it should be part of Hall of Fame voting.
Okay, then. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say another example of that would probably be Nick Batum this year. He'll be a first-time All-Star because he had it East. So look at it that way.
That's an interesting play. Now, you brought up the point I was going to bring up, Mark. Of course, you're reading my mind with this Kobe Bryant. So let's just say he doesn't get the fan vote. I think he will. Let's say he doesn't. Do you think there's going to be kind of a pull, being his last year, for the coaching staff to vote him in there and bring him in anyways, even though his play won't deserve it?
Oh man. I mean, who knows what the coaches do to decide upon this stuff? I would say no. If I'm a coach, I want to see the best talent, period. So, but I don't know what they do behind the scenes. I wouldn't want the sentimental vote. I mean, he's already said himself he doesn't want to have the tributes from different arenas, whatever. So let him just go out how he wants to go out.
Okay, hold on. You can't say that though. Like
he said that.
Yeah, but blah, blah, blah. He says that, but he also came out and said he's retiring way earlier than he needed to, right? Like he could have announced this later. Like I don't feel really bad for a guy who says halfway during the season, I'm retiring. You know how big of an influence you had on the NBA. You know you're going to get this attention. This is a pure Derek Jeter move. I don't know. I'm not sure that you can go through this and not expect all these things to happen.
Well, Kobe's always been the type of person who says one thing and does another. Perfect example is that was the All-Star game in LA. I think it was 2011, where before the game he said that Blake Griffin could have the city, that he was turning the keys over to him, and then he had like 35 points and took over the game. So that's the type of guy Kobe is. He's just kind of a Jekyll and Hyde character. So yeah, maybe he does want it, but if I'm the coaches, I want to, like I said, give a guy like a Mike Conley an actual chance to play on that team for once.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely understand that, but if they do vote him in, as as upset as I kind of would be, I'm fine with it. I think one of the greatest All-Star moments of all time came from kind of an honorary
Oh,
voting.
Magic. Yeah.
Magic Johnson,
Yeah.
exactly. So who knows what happens? Maybe Kobe goes off like he did against the Wizards and hits a bunch of shots, and it's kind of a fun farewell for him. It's fine. It's for the fans. You're talking about an all-time great player here. Um, as much as I don't agree with the usage he's getting in the regular season when these games matter, this is for the fans, and I'm okay with it.
Okay, well then I have a weird suggestion for both of you as we're closing up here talking All-Star. Listen, we say it's for the fans, then why bother having it East versus West? Because 'cause let's be fair, no one really cares, right? Like they're just playing. They're not. This is not real competition. The scores are, ballooning out of control. I actually had an idea. Why don't you take the fans' votes and just start ranking players as they're getting votes, right? This guy will have more than this, and that essentially becomes kind of like for anyone who's done like a fantasy football or basketball draft, right? And let's say you wanted the system to pre-draft for you. You would rank your favorites, right? And whoever's available, they would just take. So why don't you have fans, and you could have some celebrity coach, something like that, the fan vote team against the coach vote team, and you just go 1-1-1-1 and start picking players. The coaches would pick a player, and then whoever's the highest on the list for the fans is their next pick.
Uh, as I said earlier, I'm a traditionalist. I like East versus West, even if it can't isn't unfair at times. So
But
I
even
think
if
that'd
it's
be
that,
kind of fun.
they're not playing for anything, right? Like at
Yeah,
least if
but
they're
I just feel like you got guys that like they build up a bit of camaraderie. These are the guys that they play against more than anybody in the regular season. You got guys like LeBron, Melo, Wade, and all that getting to play together. Wade, Bosch, and LeBron playing together again. The Miami connection, and I just think there's camaraderie that's built up from that. And typically, like even though it's the scores are ballooning and everything. They usually play 3/4 of showtime, and then you start to see the competitive juices start to flow there, and they try to play hard at the fourth. Um, so I think doing it as random rankings based on fan vote and all that, I think that would take away from some of that competition and camaraderie.
all right, fair enough. Well, were there anything you guys want that stuck out to you this week that you want to bring up or shoot around that really maybe aside from what I brought up, like really made you sit back and be like, wow, this is pretty impressive.
Well, here's one that was actually thrown my way this morning, and it was written earlier this week. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wrote a very fierce article about Donald Trump. I think it was in the New York Times, I believe, this week. And basically, it alluded to the fact that there's a lot of Muslims in the basketball world, including Shaq, Rasheed Wallace, Kenneth Faried, and he
Mhm.
actually called Donald Trump a terrorist. So that's something to look at going forward, whether or
I don't
not.
think he'd be the first one to call Donald Trump a terrorist. Let's just be fair
Well,
about this. But
let's put it this way. Let's see how the basketball world reacts to this, because it's going to be a growing political charge, and it's an interesting situation for these guys to be in. Like Donald Trump saying they could be banned from America. So let's see what happens with that. I mean,
oh,
let's see Kareem stepping up to the plate. That was really interesting to read from him.
that would be a really weird play. Donald Trump becomes president, kicks Shaquille O'Neal out of the United States.
Yeah.
I feel like we would all need at least a drink after that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, if he becomes president, we have bigger problems than him kicking out NBA players.
Yeah, no kidding. And Justin, just to close, was there anything on the top of your mind that happened this week in the NBA?
Um, Not really. I mean, we
Or are you
saw
just looking
Amon
forward
Shumpert come
to
back from the
a
Cavs.
return? And did he look good in your
Yeah,
eyes?
yeah, he looked really good. 14 points, played great defense, looked fit. So it's nice to have Shumpert back. I think he should be starting for the Cavs. And the only other thing I'll say is the Warriors' 24-game win streak was ended, not 28. You don't give them credit
Yeah,
for 4 regular season wins at the end of last season. What they did was impressive enough. You don't have to bend over backwards to try to make it better.
It's a numbers game. People like inflated stats. We're getting into All-Star season. It's
it's
like,
dead. It's dead. We're good. We're good. Go Spurs, by the way. They're like 4 games behind.
Yeah, they're
Just
only 4
they're
games
just
back.
smiling. Just smiling.
yeah, I love how every single season, like people just sleep on one of the best teams. We're like again and again and again and again. And you know, this team is so good, and this is kind of the perfect storm, right? Because a lot of time they got the number one seed or very close to, and now because of how good Golden State is, they can just sit there at 20-5 and just coast,
Hmm.
and then we'll see from there. But yeah, so this has been a crazy week in the NBA. A lot more to come, and I want to thank yourself, Justin, Mark, and myself, Phil. You can join us all on social media, so just check the description of this podcast or YouTube video-ish podcast, however you're taking this in, and join us in the conversation. We'll have much more available for you on hoopslounge.com. Take care, guys.